Okay, welcome to the video. SIG Guy here. This is going to be a trigger installation video for the SIG sauer P365. And hold on, I know we're not beating a dead horse here. I promise you that. I know I got several installation videos for the 365 already out there, but I've had some people email me saying, hey, I watched your video and I got one of these triggers and it doesn't install the same way. So what I'm talking about is the MCarbo short stroke flat trigger with over travel adjustment and the Tactical Development dual flat face trigger. So we're going to be installing one of these today. The procedure is the same for both. So like I said, the steps have changed just a little bit and I want to cover that in this video. So with that, let's get started. So you got one of these two triggers, the MCarbo short stroke flat trigger with over travel adjustment screw right here in the back. You get to it from underneath, and they do supply an Allen wrench with this trigger. Or you have the Tactical Development dual flat faced trigger. Okay. So we're going to be installing the MCarbo today in my 365. So as always, we're going to make sure we're working on a safe and clear firearm. So we're going to remove our magazine, lock our slide to the rear, physically and visually check, make sure there's no round in the chamber, no magazine, check our breech face, look away, do the same thing again, chamber, magazine, breech face. We are working on a clear and safe firearm. Next, we'll rotate our takedown lever, release our slide, remove our slide, we'll set that aside, and then we'll use our pin removal tool to remove our receiver pin. Push that right out the side, we'll set that aside. And then these pin removal tools, you can find tools on sigguy.com. I have a kit for the 365. It's called the 365 Disassembly and Reassembly Kit. Comes with the pin removal tool there, and this also helps install other parts in the 365, as well as a 45-degree pick and a punch. So again, these are available on sigguy.com, as well as kits for the 320 and the Classic Series as well, and then a deluxe kit that has one of everything in it. So now we're going to remove our fire control unit. We're going to lift up on the rear just like that, pull it up and out of the grip module. We'll set our grip module to the side. Okay, so this is where I confuse the hell out of you. I want to kind of talk about what's different with these triggers versus the other triggers and why the procedure has to change. Normally, when we're disassembling, and now I'm at the point where I'm very comfortable disassembling everything on this FCU, and I'm just as confident in doing it and showing you guys how to be 100% successful doing it. It saves a lot of time. You ain't got to work around things. Just, pull everything apart, let all the parts fall, and then reassemble it. Well, we can't do that this time because there's certain things we lose access to, okay? And you'll understand that in a second. So normally we start here, and we kind of work our way around because this part holds this part in, and this part holds this part in, and so on and so forth. We're not going to start blowing everything apart here like we have in the past. So the problem, not the problem, but the difference with these triggers, normally when everything's taken apart, okay, and we're reassembling, the first thing we do is we slide our trigger into our FCU, into the chassis, just like that. And then next we hook our trigger bar onto our trigger and lay that out here to the side, just kind of hanging down. And then we put our pin in, which goes in through this side, okay? Our trigger pivot pin is right here. It's underneath our takedown safety lever, okay? This little pin, you can see half of it. The takedown safety lever actually holds that pin in and keeps it from falling out. So this part holds that part, holds that part, holds that part. This is one of those parts, okay? So normally we put our pin in first because we lose access to it. Well, we can't do that because we need as much play and movement in our trigger and our trigger bar when we're reassembling this. With the pin in there, there's not enough movement to set our trigger bar down into position. Our trigger bar is shaped like an L. It comes along the side here and then it goes into the FCU. When our pin is installed, we don't have enough play to put this thing up over this part of our FCU, bring it up and over and drop it down into the FCU. We actually have to put it all in there and then put our pin in. The problem with that is our trigger bar holds our disconnector in. In our disconnector, behind the disconnector, there's two holes for our two pins. We have our sear pivot pin, which we're not worried about today. We're not going to be removing that. Our safety lever pivot pin, that's the one we're going to be pulling out a little bit. If you pull it out too far, it's going to disconnect. It's capturing our safety lever right here. It's pivoting on it. If we pull this pin out too far, our safety lever is going to fall out. Now we have to deal with that. It's not the end of the world. It's just going to make things a lot more difficult, and we'll get to that later on. So basically, we got to pull this out just enough to get our takedown safety lever out. Okay. Then we can disassemble the stuff over here. We can pull our trigger pivot pin out, and then we can reassemble things. So you'll understand this stuff, and hopefully I didn't just blow your mind there. You're probably like, oh, I don't want to get into this. It's not that big of a deal. Just watch this video from beginning to end. That way there's no surprises. You know what to expect. And it'll make more sense as we go on. Okay, enough wasting time. Let's get to it. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to move our, not remove, we're going to pull it out just a little bit, our safety lever pivot pin. This guy right here. Okay, like in my first video I explained there's two different steps. There's this low step here, and there's a high step here. You'll see as I pull it out the two different heights. And yours might be a little bit different. Yours might be silver, yours might be black. Just they all work the same. So I'm going to use my pick here, which comes into my 365 kit, and get right underneath my safety lever here, and just I'm going to work it out just a little bit. Okay, just a little bit at a time. You can kind of see now how it's sticking up above the side of my FCU right here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to rotate it up, and I'm going to, pry it out enough to where underneath it will clear the side of my FCU as I rotate it. Okay, and you'll see here what I'm talking about in a second. So I'm going to pull that out just a little bit more, and I can just start to see underneath that pin right over here, right underneath the high step, and I should be able to grab that and rotate it clockwise. See how it's turning clockwise? I can rotate it all the way around, just like that. Okay, you don't want to go too far, but a little more than 9 o'clock. And now you can see this part holds in my takedown safety lever. Well, now it's not capturing it, so I can pull that right up and out of there. Okay, what I like to do is push this back in as far as it'll go at this point. Okay, that way we know we're not running the risk, if it's out a little bit, of it not capturing our safety lever from pivoting on it anymore. Okay, so once you're at this point, that's rotated, it's pressed in, you're home free. Easy as pie. Just don't pull that out far enough to where it releases your safety lever, because not that you're opening a can of worms, but you're making things 100 times more difficult than they need to be. So just go very slow, pull it out a little bit, try to rotate it, pull it out a little bit, try to rotate it, pull it out a little bit, until you can rotate it, and then push it in, and you're good. They're golden. All right, so you can see my takedown lever is in its normal position. If yours is hanging down, just be very careful, because your takedown lever captures your slide catch right here. There's nothing holding your slide catch in right now except this little itty bitty spring. Okay, and again, it's another pain in the butt that we don't really want to deal with, that we don't have to deal with. So if you're not careful and your slide catch comes out, there's videos on my YouTube that show you how to put that back in. Okay, so if your takedown lever is like that, just kind of push up a little bit on your slide catch, and then rotate your takedown lever so it's in this position, and that gives you all kinds of movement in your takedown safety. So this is what we're going to be removing now, because our safety lever pivot pin's out of the way. We can just kind of start to work that right out, just like that. Pull it out from the bottom. This hook here hooks on our takedown lever. We'll show you that in a second. So before I go on, I want to mention one other thing here. When people reassemble the whole thing and their takedown lever does not rotate, basically it's in the down position and they can't push it back. The reason being is, if you can look at right inside here, this little silver leg right inside there is our sear. Okay, and you can see when I push down on my sear, it actually moves. What happens is when people put in their takedown safety lever, you see this hook on here? This needs to go behind the sear. Okay, so sometimes when they put this in there, it goes in front of the sear, and then it won't push back because it's already up against the back side of our sear, and that causes the lever here not to be able to rotate. Okay, so when we're reinstalling this, you got to make sure that this leg is behind the sear. Okay, so what you do is you just push down on your sear like that when you slide this in. So I just wanted to mention that before I forgot, if I forgot in the end of this video. So next what I'm going to do is I'm going to rotate my takedown lever, just like that, in the 7 o'clock position, and we'll pull it straight out the side. We'll set that aside. And then next we're going to start working on this side here. We need to remove our trigger bar and our trigger. So what I'm going to do first is remove my trigger bar spring, which is this guy right here. I'm going to use my punch, and that trigger bar is shaped like a V. Went in, hooks onto this right here, right on the edge of your FCU. It goes through this cavity here, and then comes out on the back side of it, and then it hooks up to our trigger bar right there. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to hold my thumb against my trigger, which pushes my trigger bar back and holds it back as I just use my pick. You can use a pair of pliers, whatever works easiest for you. I'm just going to grab onto my spring and unhook it from my trigger bar. And I usually put my finger over it like this so it doesn't go flying if it does come off. So I'll get my pick in there, pull it out from under my trigger bar, pull it up. You can see the little leg here is free from the loop on my trigger bar. You can just let that fall right out. Next, we're going to remove the trigger bar, our trigger, and our pivot pin. So I have the Armory Craft trigger in here, and I'm not sure if the factory one, these holes, the size of the hole varies. So on the Armory Craft, the punch that's in my 365 kit will actually work to push our trigger pivot pin out. I know on the MCarbo, it's too big. And I think the Tactical Development one is too big as well. The MCarbo comes with an Allen wrench. So when you have this in there and you want to pop out that, you can use this Allen wrench just to push that pivot pin out, or a paper clip, or your SIM card pins, or anything you got that's small enough to fit in that hole. So here's our pivot pin right here. Pivot pin's right here in this hole. Comes out through this side. So we're gonna make sure we don't lose that. We're gonna use our punch or whatever we're using to push that pin out. And we'll just push that pin right out the side. Now we have enough play to where we can move our trigger bar up and unhook it from our trigger. But let me go over this really quick like we talked about in the very beginning. So you can see how much play there is in this, and I can actually bring it up and out. Normally, when we're putting these triggers in, we're going to put this back in last and then hook our trigger bar spring up. Okay? And what that does is our disconnector here, that's just going to fall off. Like one part captures another part, captures another part. Well, our trigger bar holds our disconnector in. So with our disconnector removed, we have these two holes right here. This one's for our sear pivot pin. This one's for our safety lever pivot pin. Normally we like access to these as we're reassembling this thing until almost the very end. Okay, we can't do that putting these newer triggers in. Okay, because our disconnector has to be installed, and this only goes in one way. So if it fell out, no big deal. Our disconnector has to be in order when we put our trigger bar in. Okay, so with the new triggers in there and the pin installed, there's no movement. There's no way you can even do this. Okay, you can't lift it up and over there like that. So what we have to do is, when we're installing these new triggers, we have to put that in place first and then put our pivot pin in. And with this in place, we lose access to those holes. That's the whole hiccup in this whole procedure. Okay, so we got a trigger pivot pin out. We're going to pull our trigger bar out like this, and then we can actually rotate this guy up and kind of come out through the top just like that. Okay, with your pivot pin in, no matter which trigger you're working on, there's not enough movement to get our trigger bar hooked back up. Okay, so you got to take the pin out in order to disconnect this. So we'll pull that out right there. We'll put that aside, and then we'll just remove our trigger. Sometimes these fall right out. Sometimes you got to kind of wiggle them to get them out. But there you have it. All right, so we're gonna remove our disconnector, put that to the side so we don't lose that. And at this point, we're gonna take a few minutes. You can skip through this if none of this stuff happened to you, but I'm gonna actually show you how to fix a couple things here. If our safety lever came out too far, so I'm gonna pull this out to where my safety lever fell out. And if that happened to you, you're probably crapping your pants. So we got the safety lever out. We'll show you how to fix that. And I hate doing this, but we're going to pull our slide catch off. Oops, that fell out during this whole disassembly, and I'm going to show you how to address this stuff, because this is the time to do it right now. All right, so first we'll put our slide catch in, and there are a couple different ways to do this. One of them, a customer showed me, was using a piece of string or floss or whatever. You can actually put it underneath your spring here. Your spring has to be pulled up like this in order to get your slide catch in there. And we got this little leg here which goes inside the FCU, and that spring lays right in here. One part captures another part, captures another part. Well, that spring laying right down here keeps this from falling out. And then your takedown lever, you see how it's kind of shiny there where it's rubbing against it. Your takedown lever being right here keeps the front part from falling out. So we got to lift that spring up, plop this in there, no big deal. Easier said than done. So like I said, one guy sent me an email and said, hey, I used a piece of string. I put it through the hole, came up over on the inside, the other part through the outside. He pulled up like this with the string, which is genius. He's able to drop the lever right down in there, pull the string out, golden. That right there is money. Awesome. I mean, if anybody ever has any tips, feel free to send them. I like to pass that stuff along. So basically this goes in, this rounded part here goes right in that cavity there. And then that little leg there has to go underneath our spring. So probably gonna be hard to show you this on camera, but I'm gonna get my backside in there like that. I'm gonna come in through this side here, pull up on my spring, push down on that, and then pull my pick out, and it did not work. So we'll try that again. And sometimes you don't even have to actually put this end in first. You can just push the other pointed end in and then push this down into the cavity here. So we'll try that. And if your spring comes out, no big deal. It's around this post right here. Okay. You see the one leg there is captured in the channel of the FCU. And then it just goes over into the hole there. Okay. Just be careful not to lose that. And one other spring too, you want to be careful not losing is right here. This little one here that holds your receiver pin in place. One part captures another, captures another. Well, that just slides right off. Make sure you don't lose that. You want to rotate. If you ever want to take that off, you just rotate this down. Oops. Just like that. It flies out. If you just rotate it down, and then it'll pull out. And then to put it back in, one end's flat. I'm gonna lose that thing here. One end is flat, one end is rounded. The flat end goes in the bottom through the hole. Shouldn't have taken this out, but things happen and I want to make sure everybody can fix something if it goes wrong. See, I'm laying it right on the side there. And we're just going to push it up and over and make sure it's down all the way. I don't even know if you can get those. You might be able to, but just be careful and mindful of it. That way, if you're putting your receiver pin in the end and it doesn't stay locked in, you know why. It's because that is not either in all the way or correctly, or it's gone. Anyway, so back to this. We're going to lift up on the spring. And actually, an easier way, I forgot it. I rarely ever take this off. But if you take that little leg, you can actually put it underneath the spring. kind of push up on the spring and then bring this forward and down into the hole. I think that's the way I was doing it. Yep. So kind of start your spring up with your pick or whatever. You can get that little leg underneath there. We're going to bring that leg towards the front and then just drop it right down in there. That's how I was doing it. Okay. Little function check, make sure it's working. You can actually see the spring on the back side. It's capturing it. So I rarely ever take that out. There's really no need to, but so again, just use a pick or something, kind of lift up on the spring enough to get that little leg on the back side of this underneath the spring, and then use this, grab right onto it with your fingers, push up on the spring as you push it forward, drop it down into the hole, and then put the back side on right there. Okay, so that's all set there. Let's move on to our safety lever, putting that back in. Okay, moving right along. You pulled your safety lever pivot pin out too far and your safety lever fell out. No big deal. You got two holes in the side over here. You got the big hole up top, which is your sear pivot pin. In the lower hole, the smaller one, is your safety lever pivot pin. So we're going to be using this hole here to line up our safety lever and push our pin back through. Okay. So we have our safety lever here. What you need to do is make sure your safety lever is out far enough to where there's a gap right here, so we can drop our safety lever back into there. Your safety lever goes in this way right here. Okay, this is the rear, this is the front. This hook up top faces forward. This is the little guy here that's usually pivoted like this, and you can't get your slide back on, so you got to make sure it's pivoted forward so the slide can go over it. So the little hook up top faces forward, and then the pointy part faces down. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to drop it into this slot here as we're watching through these holes. The hole in this, we need to line up with the bottom hole. Okay. So again, this can take 2 seconds and it can be a pain in the butt. So we're just going to drop it into here. You can see it right in the hole there, the leg. So I'm just going to put that in there, feed it down, and I can see where my hole right here lined up perfectly. So this tool in my kit, this is made for this specific purpose, okay? Where I can put this through the hole here. You can actually see I can push my safety lever pin all the way out. This is used to line this stuff up. So with this inserted like that, it makes it very easy just to push that pin all the way back in. You see the pins in all the way right here. A lot of times that safety lever is kind of off center and you can't push that pin back in. So that was the reason why I came up with this size punch for this specific purpose here. And this works for the receiver pin as well. Okay. So now that we have that in there like that, what we need to do is back it out just a little bit. Not enough to where our safety lever is going to fall off again, but just enough to where we can rotate this over the side of our FCU, push it back in, and right there you are good to go. We're going to make sure our safety lever pivots. Okay, it flops up and down. It does not fall out. Sometimes you can push that pin in there and you miss the safety lever altogether. You think you're good to go, you're working on it, the thing falls out. So just make sure you are in fact, you captured it and it works properly. Okay, so let's get on to installing our trigger. And I know my videos are long-winded, I get told it all the time, but the reason for it is not everything goes smooth for everybody. So if there's anything that can happen, your slide catch popped out, your safety lever popped out, I'm going to address it so that way if it happened to you, you know how to fix it. Okay, if it didn't happen to you, awesome, you can get through this a lot quicker, but I need to take care of those people that that might happen to. So stuff happens, and if I'm going to encourage you to change out your trigger, then I need to provide the information to help you complete that task successfully 100% of the time. All right, so on our trigger, I'm going to use the MCarbo one, And our trigger has a post on the back side right here. Right here. And that post is what our trigger bar hole goes over. Okay. So our trigger bar is going to be positioned like that. So when we slide our trigger bar on, it's going to go right over that post, just like that. And that's what moves your trigger bar when you pull your trigger. Okay. Our trigger has a notch right here. That notch goes right over this portion of our FCU. Okay, that portion there goes right into that notch. So this side, just like this. This is the front, this is the back. We're going to install our trigger just like that. And you can see how the top part of my trigger here is kind of in the center of that hole. Now I can take my trigger bar, and our trigger bar goes in like this. Okay, just like that. So I'm going to rotate this up, slide my trigger bar in through the back side just like that, to where I can feel it kind of captures onto that post. And then I'm just going to rotate it to the side here. And I can actually move it like this to make sure it is captured, which it is. Okay, and I'm just going to kind of hang this guy down right there. We're not going to put that all together yet because this is one of the steps that has changed with reassembling this. We need to install our takedown lever first, and I'm going to show you why we need to do that at this portion. All right, typically we like to wait until almost the end to put our takedown lever in, but we can't with these triggers because there's not as much movement as we typically have. So on our takedown lever, we have this notch right here, this little ridge. Okay, what actually locks this in place. That ridge goes right inside here. This little channel. It's that silver portion. Okay, it needs to go in there. So when we have our trigger bar in and our trigger bar spring and our pin in and everything, this portion of the trigger doesn't go back far enough to allow this portion here to slide all the way in and lock into that channel. Okay, so we need to install this right now. So typically, just like always, we go in about 7 o'clock. About 7 o'clock, we push it in and then we rotate it. Okay. If these are pretty much even, you're in perfectly where you need to be. On this side here, you can see how it's pretty much straight flat across right here. This is the takedown lever, and this is the FCU, straight across. Sometimes what happens is people put this in and it's like this. Well, you can see it's not really noticeable, but you can see here is my slide catch. Here is my takedown. They're not even. If you rotate it over here, you can definitely see we are not even. Okay, right here. So we need to rotate this back to like 7 o'clock. Push it in, rotate it back to where this is even here. This is even here. We are good to go. Okay, so that is very important to do that at this time, because once you get the trigger bar spring in and the pin in, you can't do it. So we'll go back to this side here. I'm going to hold this with my finger so it doesn't fall out. I will take my disconnector. I'm going to install that. Disconnector only goes in one way. So we have this flat portion on the bottom with this little nub on top. Our trigger bar actually rides underneath this nub, and that's what keeps it from falling down and out. And then on their sides, they're kind of shaped like a wedge where they slide up into the FCU, and that keeps it from falling straight out. Okay, so the little nub out and up, I'm going to put that on the side of the FCU here, slide that up in there just like that. And now we'll take our trigger bar and put that right over there, drop it down into place. Just kind of move things around, make sure my takedown lever's in the right place. just like that. What I'm going to do now is install my trigger bar spring so none of this stuff falls apart. But before we do that, we're going to put our pivot pin in, okay? So we have to put our pivot pin in now because once we put our takedown safety lever in there, we're not going to have access to this hole. That hole right there is where our pivot pin goes. So I want to mention too, and I should have mentioned this before we put any of this in there, what I would do, and of course you're watching this video from beginning to end before you do any of this stuff. What I would do is take your pivot pin for your trigger and your new trigger, the MCarbo or the tactical development one or whatever one you're using, and we're going to install our pivot pin just like this inside our trigger, okay? And we're going to make sure that our trigger pivots nice and easily on there. It slides in and out nice and easily. We don't have to use a hammer or a sledgehammer or whatever to bang that pin in there. It's got to be a nice, loose, perfect fit, okay? What happens to some people is they put their pivot pin in, they get it all buttoned up, they go to pull the trigger, it works properly, but then the trigger won't reset, okay? The only thing that resets our trigger is this little spring, okay? This thing can only do so much. If this is a really tight fit, a lot of friction here, that spring is not tight or strong enough to push your trigger back forward to reset it. So that's why we got to make sure that this is a nice, perfect fit before we go through all this trouble of installing our trigger, okay? So, like every part that you get, it says on it, have a qualified gunsmith install this for you. So if this is a tight fit, what a gunsmith is doing is he's taking like a piece of sandpaper or something, he's putting it around the pin, he's working it back and forth, and he's getting that nitride finish or whatever might be on there, just making it slightly smaller, both sides, testing it to see if it fits perfectly, and if it does, he puts it in, puts it together. You come in, pick up your gun, you try it out, you love it, versus the other people who do this stuff at home. They're not paying attention to certain things. They go to install it, it doesn't work. Now, oh my God, the trigger manufacturer, this trigger sucks. You know, they didn't do their job right, whatever the case may be. You got to smith some of this stuff, okay? This is a hobby, it's an upgrade. It's not made by SIG to fit, you know, whatever. So sometimes 90% of the time it does fit properly right out of the package. Sometimes you have to do some additional steps to ensure it's going to work properly. So I just wanted to mention that because it happens. You get a lot of emails. Hey, this thing won't reset. Well, a lot of times it's the trigger pivot pin is too tight fitting in there, okay? Like I already said, my punch goes through this trigger, no problem. The hole is big enough, okay? But on this one here, well, guess what? It doesn't go through there. So there is a difference. So we just want to make sure that this is properly fitting before we go install this whole thing. So having said that, we're going to install our trigger pivot pin through this side here. And as I'm pushing in on there, I'm going to be moving my trigger around until I feel it go in there. It's nice and flush right here. If it's sticking out, you got a problem. You got to figure out why isn't going in all the way. Okay, it should be nice and flush there. That way we can get our takedown safety lever bar put on there. So now that that's in there, mine's pretty loose. If I flip this over, generally it just falls right out, which is fine, okay? So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take my trigger bar spring. We're gonna install that. This can go on either way, doesn't matter. We have a notch right here. That was my stomach, sorry. That spring, one leg's gonna hook onto here, and the other leg's gonna hook onto the trigger bar right through that hole right there, okay? Right there. So, I'm gonna take my trigger bar spring, put it right through that hole right there. Hook it onto that notch on the FCU, just like that, right here. And then I'm going to use my pick. You can use a pair of needle nose pliers, whatever you find easiest. I'm just going to grab onto my spring there. I'm going to pull it back, push it in behind my trigger bar, and then get this end of my spring right into the hole. So I use my thumb holding my trigger, my palm there, holding the trigger forward. That keeps my trigger bar from wanting to come back, which makes it easier to put my trigger bar spring on. Okay. So I'll put this right down on the table here. And sometimes this goes in 2 seconds. Sometimes it takes a couple attempts. Right there, first attempt. Trigger bar spring through the trigger bar hole. Sometimes it's behind it, but it's not in the hole. If you just kind of put your finger over it and move this end of the spring, it'll move that hook and go right through the hole. Okay. Then we're gonna actually do a little function check. Make sure my trigger is resetting by itself, which it is. That part's good to go. All right, next we're gonna put in our takedown safety lever, which is this guy right here. Remember, this hook here hooks into the little notch underneath the takedown lever, right inside here, this little notch. So basically you want to have that in like the 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock position, somewhere in there. Now there's a couple things going on here. We got to get this one hook into the notch on our takedown lever, and then on our FCU frame, we have this little nub right here sticking up. Okay, so our takedown safety lever needs to be above that nub. Okay, that keeps it from falling down. One thing captures another thing, captures another thing. So our takedown safety lever goes above this nub in that notch, and then the back side goes in here behind our sear, the little leg on our sear. Okay, so about 4 o'clock. We're going to take our little hook there and put it into the notch on our takedown lever. And we're just going to let our takedown lever do its own thing now, okay? We're going to kind of turn this around like this, and then we're going to start feeding this part in here. Now, remember in the beginning of the video, our little leg on our safety lever needs to go behind our sear. You can see the leg of my sear there, that silver leg right there. Right now it's in front of it. So if I stick that down inside there, see if I can get this here. If I stick that down inside there, okay, it's down in there, it's flat. Well, guess what? I can't move my takedown lever at all now. Even when I push up on my slide catch, it does not move back. So people usually at the end of this whole process are like, my takedown lever does not move. Well, the safety lever is in front of the sear. The sear can't pivot back anymore. It's made to go forward like this, okay, because the sear's got to drop down. This is like an L. It works like this. It does not work like this. So when we're putting this in there, now if this happens and your takedown lever doesn't go forward, 2-second fix. You ain't got to pull this thing all the way out. I'm going to use my finger. I'm going to push down on my sear right here. I'm just going to pull this out a little bit, push down on my sear, drop that back in. Okay, now guess what? When I push up on my slide catch, because this little notch here is locking it, push up on my slide catch, my lever rotates like properly. Guess what? My lever went back far enough. Okay, because it's in behind our sear now. Again, all I did was I pushed down on this with my finger. That brought that leg forward and made my takedown safety lever drop in right behind it. All right, so we are on the home stretch. We are gonna take our safety lever pivot pin. We're gonna rotate it, push it in. At this point, you do not want to pull that out far enough to where your safety lever falls out, because you're gonna have to backtrack halfway through this video to fix it. So all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna rotate this around so it's just like that. And I call it the little shark fin here. It's pointed up. That's what captures our sear pivot pin. The flat part's facing down, and we're just going to push that right in. Okay. The bottom part here captures our takedown safety lever. The top part captures our sear pivot pin. One part captures another part, captures another part. It's pretty genius the way they did this stuff. The 320 is pretty similar. Anyway, so that's all the way in. We are flat right here. If you cannot get this into your FCU, 9 times out of 10, it's because this pin isn't in all the way. Couple reasons. One, we just didn't push it in far enough. But another reason, which gets overlooked, is your sear pivot pin is not in all the way. Somehow it worked its way out a little bit. So when this goes up against it, this isn't in all the way and this isn't in all the way. So if you're running into this, just kind of use your pick, punch, whatever you got. Even move your sear like this with your finger as you're pushing in on this pin. You'll feel it going a little bit. Then you can push your safety lever pivot pin in all the way and you're good to go. Okay, so there you go. Completely reassembled. It's as easy as that. Now all that we have left is to take our grip module. We'll put in the front part of our FCU first, into the notch right here. This is where your takedown lever goes, just like that. And then we'll lock the back in just like that. Make sure you check to make sure your spring is still in there that we talked about earlier. Slide your receiver pin through there. Push up on our slide catch. Rotate our takedown lever. Hold that with our finger. Make sure our safety lever, this guy right here, is down. Some people's firearms have a lot of grease and lube and everything, and then it's kind of like making it stick up. So just make sure we're down. Get our slide, install our slide, push it up to lock it like that. Rotator. Your takedown lever should go automatically by itself, but if it doesn't, just rotate your takedown lever and then release your slide. All right, and there you have it. Pat yourself on the back. You got your trigger successfully installed. Another pro tip. Basically, before you put your adjustment screw in on this one, you want to put some blue Loctite on there, then put it in there. That way, by the time when you're ready to make the adjustments, it's set up a little bit, and you can make your adjustments. So before we make our adjustments, we're going to make sure we're safe and clear still. Check our chamber, magazine, breech face, look away. Do the same thing again. Chamber, magazine, breech face. We're going to be pulling the trigger, so we need to make sure that we are still safe, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to point the muzzle in a safe direction, not covering with body parts or anything. We're going to pull our trigger. Gun goes off. We're going to rack our slide. We're going to run our adjustment screw in a little bit. Pull the trigger again. Gun goes off. Keep repeating this process, running that screw in there until it doesn't work, okay? At that point, you're going to back that screw out however much you deem necessary, okay? So if this is an EDC, that screw's job is to prevent the trigger from going back depending on how much you have it adjusted. Be pretty stupid and you need this thing to defend your life and you got that thing over adjusted and your gun won't work. So if it's an EDC, back it out more than right on the hairy edge. Take it to the range, put a couple hundred rounds through it, make sure it's going to be 100% reliable, and then you can return it to service, okay? If it's a competition one or whatever and you feel your trigger really needs to be on that hairy edge, then run it into the max and then run it. It's up to you. So that's how we're going to adjust our trigger. And then before we return this to service, we're always going to perform a functions check to make sure everything works properly. Okay, functions check. So we're going to need a magazine. Ensure that it is not loaded because we're going to be pulling our trigger, okay? We're going to lock our slide to the rear. You can never do this stuff too many times. Negligent discharges happen because people think they know what state their pistol's in, and guess what? It's not in that state. So chamber, magazine, breech face, look away, chamber, magazine, breech face, good to go, okay? So the first thing, and we're going to pull our trigger. First thing we're going to do is install our magazine, and we're going to make sure it locks into place. We're going to tug down on it, make sure it does not come out, and then when we push our mag release, it should fall out under its own weight. Oops. Which it does. And you'll notice I have the Katana Magwell on here on the Wilson Combat grip. Empire finally made them for the Wilson Combat, and they're a pretty good seller right now. So if you want an extended Magwell on your 365, I have these on the website as well as Wilson Combats for in tan and black, manual safety, non-manual safety for pretty much all the SIGs, okay? So again, that works properly. Next, what we're going to do is with our magazine installed, it is an empty magazine, so our follower is pushing up on our slide catch right now. So as we slide our slide back slowly, we should see our slide catch push up, which it did, and locked it into place, okay? And now you can notice I have the FDES Works new slide here. Basically, it's an XL length slide that uses the regular 365 barrel, and it's got the integrated compensator on the slide. Pretty awesome. These should be available on the website eventually as well. So anyway, we locked it to the rear. That worked properly. We can remove our magazine, and then what we're going to do is we're going to pull back on our slide, and our slide release should drop by itself, which it does, and we can release our slide. Okay. Next, muzzle in a safe direction, not covering any body parts, nobody downrange. We're going to pull our trigger. Trigger works fine. Holding our trigger to the rear, we're going to cycle it to the rear, let it go. Now we're going to test our reset. Pistol reset, that works fine as well. Okay. Next, we're going to rack our slide again. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take it out of battery, which means the slide's not all the way forward. We should have a dead trigger. The disconnector is pushing down on the trigger bar, disengaging it from the sear, which that's working properly as well. Okay. So there you go. This pistol is working fine. It is ready to return to service. Okay, and here's my shameless plug portion of the video. If I talk too much and I'm annoying you, you can kind of check out if you want, but just kind of want to go over where I'm at with the website, what my plans are. So with the website, I'm trying to basically add as much product from many different manufacturers to the website as I can. Not everybody has the same taste. Not everybody likes the same manufacturer. So if you can buy all these different components that you like from different manufacturers and pay one shipping fee, that saves you money. My shipping is super fast. I get up super early every morning, make sure all the previous day's orders, I usually do it the night before, but a lot of them come in as I'm sleeping. So I try to get all those orders packaged before the mail comes, or I go to the post office and drop it off, whatever the case may be. That way you guys get the stuff super fast. Okay. I hate waiting. I'm sure you guys do too. So again, as much product from many different manufacturers as I can. So we already talked about the FDES slide here. Love it. Optics ready. Those will be on the website eventually. Wilson Combat grip modules. That was kind of the last phase I went through. Added all those for the 365, the 365 XL, the 320s, full size, carry 2, X compact, black tan, with and without safety. Every single option, all on the website. Plenty of each in stock. So Icarus precision grip modules, I added those as well. These, I'm telling you right now, this is going to be my EDC right here. FDES slide with the Icarus grip module. These things are in a league of their own. These feel so nice. Pricey, but you're getting what you pay for. So these I have on the website for the 365, the 365 XL, the X Carry, the full size, their Pro Comp one and all that. These have different styles where it's got the gas pedal kind of made right to the frame. Left-handed shooter, right-handed shooter, ambi shooter, and then you can get it without it. Different styles. Anyway, so limited quantities on the website because these are pricey. I usually got 2 of everything in stock for the 365, the XL, the Carry, and the full size. Magwells, Empire just came out with these for the Wilson Combat. I actually got them before anybody got them, even before Empire put them on their website. So they came out with this new design for the Wilson Combat because everybody's loving these grips. I do have these for the regular SIG grip module as well. Usually red, raw, titanium, and black. Red's not available in the Wilson Combat yet. Anyway, so I got those base pads from all different manufacturers, your extended mag release from all different manufacturers, the extended ones, the Springer Precision paddle ones. I just added the Wilson Combat bulletproof stainless ones. Tons of triggers, curved, flat, many different, all SIG pistols pretty much. We got your guide rod tuning kits, DPMs, very popular. Those come from Greece, so there's a lot of issues with customs with those, but I got them for basically every single SIG out there, and plenty of those in stock. We got the Armory Craft ones for your SIGs as well, and then Wolf for the full-size 320. And barrels was my biggest project lately. The True Precision barrels, I just added those for 365, the XL, the 320s, threaded, non-threaded, usually 5 different colors. Not all of them are available yet, but a lot of them are on the website already. Those are really hard to get, so whatever I can get are on there, and I got more on the way. Safari Precision as well. I think I got 1 left. I got another shipment coming in a couple days for true barrels. And then another project I'm working on is small parts. So when we buy these slides from Will, you're going to need either to strip your old slide or buy a slide completion kit, your extractor, your striker safety, your guide rod and spring, your sights. All these little parts you're going to need to buy. So the Fluxrator guys, like if they got a manual safety 320, they like to you're going to have to remove the manual safety to use that FCU in the Fluxrator. So the safety delete pin is pretty hard to find. I was actually buying them used from AB Prototype, I think I was getting them from. and those flew. I mean, those were gone almost immediately. But I got a SIG rep now to where I can get all these small parts OEM from SIG. So I just got a ton of the safety lever pins OEM from SIG, brand new in the package. And we got the spring seats for the classic mainspring seats. All this stuff I'm adding to the website. It's all added. I'm just waiting for the parts to show up so I can have those available for you guys to buy. So all the upgrades, got a good handle on that. The tools, this is the one I've been using throughout this video, the X365 Disassembly Reassembly Kit. This is the old green one. Basically, the manufacturer discontinued this by itself. Could not get it anymore. I love this color for the 365. So I'll be hanging on to that one. That's the last one I have. We switched to the orange. These have been flying off the shelf, but guess what? Now they've discontinued me being able to buy this pick by itself. I can only buy it with 3 other picks. I don't need all these other picks. So the same thing with the punch here. They're about 4 times more expensive than pre-COVID when I was buying them. So I'm actually having these made for me. SIG guy on the engraved on them and everything, which will lower the cost. And then I'm working on a solution with the same people for the picks, so we can continue to sell these. So that's the upgrades, the tools, and lastly, the subscribe button right down here in the corner. If you have not subscribed to my YouTube channel and you find this kind of content helpful, please subscribe, pass the word, give me a thumbs up, a like. That helps spread the video so more people get a chance to see it as well. So thank you very much for watching the video. I hope this has helped. Have a good day.